Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay. My dear guests, I'm Azman, your host. Welcome to CJ Breakfast. Thank you everyone for being here with us today, both here at Malakat Mall and also for those who are joining us virtually via live stream. This is our second session of CJ Breakfast. We organize CJ Breakfast to connect and to inspire people. The last 2 years have been tough for most businesses. Many barely survive, so hopefully here we can connect with like-minded people and to build back business. We had a good session in the last one, and we hope this time everyone will benefit from this session as well. Now, back in 2015, I was running Capital TV, Malaysia's business channel on Unify TV. And then we had this idea, crazy idea, to take Malaysian businesses to international stage. Let's bring them to London Tech Week in UK. So we got the support of MOSTI, British High Commission, Lim Kok Wing University, and Matrade. And we got 12 companies to set up shop in Piccadilly. Of all companies though, there was this 1-year-old startup that really stood out from the rest. The founder gave a presentation. There is with vision, with purpose, and the audience like it. So, Datuk, you were there as well, kan Datuk? You can remember. So fast forward, 7 years later, that company has grown to be the world leader in its industry, and that founder is now a multiple award winner and has graced many front page covers. So it is my pleasure to have here with us the CEO and founder of Aerodyne, the world's #1 drone service provider, and I believe soon to be a unicorn. So based right here in Cyberjaya, please give a warm welcome to my old friend, the super entrepreneur Kamarul Muhammad. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So when Azman was running Cyberjaya.tv, I was running Malaysia.tv masa tu as well. We have a slight different lah. You were doing live show, I was doing something like YouTube. So I always tell my people that we hold the distinction of being the inventor of YouTube before YouTube even existed. So that gave me a lesson as well, that business is all about right place, right time. So when we did our Malaysia.tv, I was burning around 70 to 100,000 a month. At that time, big money lah. 70 to 100,000 a month. So after 2 years, I pulled the plug. And then 2 years later, YouTube was born. Right? So right place, right time. You know. So likewise, my Aerodyne, what I do right now, I think we are at the right place, right time. So it really helped us to, so that's lesson #1. So I think this morning I really just want to sort of talk a little bit about our journey and then be sharing lessons. I start with that lesson #1, right place, right time is very important lah. Right? So I started the company in late 2014, early 2015. I started with 3 people, and this is lesson #2. Right? So lesson #2, you must have the right co-founder. And then you have to start with the right reason, purpose and reason. So when I started Aerodyne, initially we did not have this big plan, this big vision that we do today. At that time, I have my other companies. That is actually a media company, a very successful media company lah. I would say we've been around until now pun ada. So in that media company, we have a drone division. So that drone division in the past was just doing all of the media work, right? So I traveled to Russia, I traveled all over the world using drone to capture visual only at that time. Then I had an epiphany, I would say, "Oi, I can actually use drone to do industrial application." So that's how it started. And then while I was running my other company, I have two good friends, best friend, right? And this best friend is actually working with me as a freelancer. So he's been working with me. I kata kalau ada apa-apa, okay, I will call him. He can work, and then he's very committed and all that. So okay, so I told him, why don't we, set up a new company? Then at least you have a stake in the company. So you take 30%, and another friend take 30%. I take 30%, but I will fund this company. You all don't have to fund any to fund. You all will do. One of them supposed to do R&D. One of them supposed to do business development. Lesson number 2. You must get the right co-founder. So the reason also must be right. At that time, the reason was to help a friend. It didn't work. It didn't work. So what happened was, I started to, the business grew very fast. Within the first 1 year, I put in 1 million into that company. Within the first year, our revenue about 6 million, which is not bad for a startup. And we were profitable. But I end up, I have to do all the work. The other partners still having that the freelance mentality like he used to work before. Again, he would come to work at 2 o'clock, keluar pukul 4. I kata, why? Oh, I have to ambil anak sekolah pula. Right? So again, another lesson learned. Lesson learned here is that when you go into a venture, in my case, when we go into a venture, we must find the right partner. And that's what I did. So in the end, I had to basically ask them to cordially leave. And then, and then we grew exponentially. I mean, we started with 3 people. Today we are about 800 plus people with presence in, alhamdulillah, with presence in 35 countries. We have offices in 12 countries, in almost every continent actually. Our big office is actually, of course, in Cyberjaya here. Our office in Cyberjaya ni house about almost 500 people kat sini. The rest are overseas. So our big office is actually in Washington DC, in Dubai. We have 2 offices in Dubai. We have a HQ for LATAM, Latin America, in Santiago de Chile. Our next acquisition will be in Brazil. I'm going to Brazil in about 2 weeks' time. So how we've been growing, and that's lesson number 3. We in the beginning, kita grew organically. For the first 3 years, memang we grew organically. Fortunately, lesson for us as well, we can grow organically if we are profitable. You have the cash flow, you generate enough cash flow, so you can grow. So that's what we did, right? But then, by 2018, the expansion became a lot faster for us. So we couldn't fund our growth anymore, right? We can, but we have to slow down. So because we have all of this opportunity, we decided, hey, we should seize this opportunity. So our lesson then was, okay, we had investors that came to court us basically. We weren't looking. We said no to him for almost 6 months. So in the end, I thought, okay, I think this is the right time for us to do it. And of course, again, I think the lesson here is that raising fund is also about doing it at the right time. Because you raise fund too early, it will be very expensive. So I have a lot of friends sekarang ni, fellow startup, because I'm in the NEF as well, I help coach a lot of startup as well. Don't raise too early if you can. If you raise too early, especially with your angel investors and whatever not, I mean, it can be very costly. So you end up losing a lot of your stake in the beginning. The best investors that if you can, gather them would be family and friends lah in the beginning, right? So anyway, so 2018 we started to, we closed our first investment from outside, which is Axiata. It was their record. It was closed in record time, due D in 2 weeks, and then money came in 3 days after the due D was completed. So that was amazing as well. So how did that happen? Because we told them, right, if you want to come in, we are only interested to do this because we have an opportunity to acquire a company in Denmark at that time. So if you, for us this is exciting. So if you come in and invest with us, we need this fund to help us grow to the next level. So because of that, they all been very accelerated. We closed the M&A, we closed the funding very quickly, and immediately we execute our M&A. So the lesson learned with this M&A pula is that Guess what? Right? The M&A did not work very well. So we exited 1 year later. So the lesson learned here, and I would say right now we are pretty good in doing M&A. I have a team of about 7 people, 3 of them ex-Khazanah. They actually run our strategy M&A team. To date, we have completed 18 M&A. The 19 is about to close dengan Brazil. Out of this 19, 2 kita dispose balik. And every time we dispose, we make profit on the disposal of the subsidiary. So lesson learned kat sini, that again, we learn ourselves juga lah. As we go along, lesson learned from us is that whenever we do M&A, we must have very clear exit strategy. What if things doesn't work, right? So in that case, in both cases that we exited, we make money because we already have that exit strategy immediately. So the Danish one does not work because of cultural differences that we could not reconcile. Business wasn't so bad, but the cultural differences were so big, so we exited 1 year later. So that's lesson number 4. Culture is very, very important, especially when we grew the company. Imagine, daripada 3 orang, we grew to 100, 200, now it's 800. So we had a lot of challenge. How do we bring all of this different mind together? So a little over 3 years ago, we set up a cultural integration team. So that's another lesson learned as well. We realized from early stage that putting people together, the differences, kita punya diversity is very important, but how do we bring people together? So today, I have a division where at C-level, is led by a C-level position, which is also my better half lah, my wife. She's also the co-founder of the company. Every single day, she would spend 1 hour every single day to speak to everyone within the organization, from the highest to the lowest level, to identify challenges, to identify good talents and all that. So that actually have helped us a lot. Before this, kita tak buat benda tu. Then we see that the incongruency were there and all that, the integration tak happen. So bila kita combine benda ni, it works very well. So that's another lesson. So back to M&A tadi, the reason why we did do the M&A actually for 2 reasons. Number 1 is market access. We wanted to be global number 1 daripada awal lagi. In fact, I have one very interesting story to share lah pagi ni. I have 5 minutes lagi 5 minutes, alright. So when we started, go back to 2014, early 2015, our inspiration was this company in America. They were the world's largest masa tu. They were the world's largest, and kalau keluar ranking tu, they are number 1 or number 2, number 1, number 2 every year lah. Alright. So we were looking at their website. I remember in the early days, what I would do is actually look at their website, see what do they do, and I said, wow, these people are crazy. When I tengok dekat dia punya website, they have people, senior leader, very experienced guys leading all the various organizations and all that. I said, how can they even afford this? I know how difficult it was for me at that time, even to take care of the salary of my team and all that. But anyway, I was learning them. Fast forward to December 2019, we acquired them. Right? 2019, we acquired 60% of the company, of that American company. And 2 months ago, we acquired the remaining 40%. So now we own 100% of the company. Right? So that but of course it helps also that they did not adapt to market changes so much. They were stuck with their punya idea from the old days. But we wanted their branding. And we wanted access in America. So that's actually what we did lah. So again, the fifth lesson here is actually M&A actually works for us, really for market access. That's how we've been able to grow fast over the past 4 years lah. Maybe last sharing from me is the challenges that we went through. Dalam 7 tahun of our existence today, maybe some other time lah, we actually have a graph that we always share that talk about our journey. Our journey goes like this lah. It's almost like hockey stick lah, I would say, towards the end. So during our journey the last 7 tahun ni, kita ada 9 red dot. Each of these red dots represent key challenge that we face. Kalau kita tak solve any of these challenges that we went through, it could have been the end of us. It was very serious. Some of these challenges were delivery issue, technology issue, cultural issue that I talked about earlier, scaling issue, project management issue. So all of these were one of these 9. One of it is actually funding issue as well. One of it was funding issue because we were growing so fast. At one stage, we are running out of money in the bank as well, but we managed it well. So the last lesson learned that I want to share here is to really never give up. You know, because running a business is for the criminally insane. Really, it's tough. It's tough. You know, and I think the difference between those that make it and those that don't are really how you pick yourself up when you fall down, because you will fall down. You know, I personally went through 9 over the past 7 years. It's very tough. At any point of time kat sana, terfikir juga, why am I putting myself into this? Today, alhamdulillah lah, masih ada energy lagi. I wake up every day around 4:30, pukul 5. I did not finish until about 11 o'clock at night. But I guess because I enjoy what I'm doing, this is like my passion. I don't take this as working lah, I would say. So last but not least, that's the lesson lah. I think entrepreneur journey, especially technology, is actually a very, very tough journey. Never give up, you know, and I think the hard work that we go through is really about strengthening us lah. You know, lesson learned and all that make us a better leader, a better entrepreneur and whatnot. All right, with that, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. Question, boleh? Okay. How old? Come on, janganlah tanya age publicly, bro. No, I'm not young lah. I'm sama dengan Azman. Okay. Alright, so I had many past lives. Before this, I was running Computer Associates. I was a country manager in Malaysia. Before that, I was working in London for 4 years. So I've gone through, I was doing all kind of things. I even went through 4 years of just pursuing my hobby, which is I love photography. So I was doing photography, I traveled the world, and that's how Aerodyne started. Because masa tu, then I started to use drone for visual as well. Yeah.
So it's never too late to start a large.
Never too late. Never too late to start. Okay. I have to stay up here ke? Okay, you nak camera. Yeah.
Assalamualaikum and thank you for a very inspiring talk. My name is Yazdi. I got one question. And the last thing that you mentioned about being an entrepreneur is not to give up. But then at the same time, earlier on you told us that you pulled the plug on your My TV or something.
Malaysia
right?
TV, yes, correct.
Right. So, as an entrepreneur, how do we know? Because when not to give up?
All right. Actually, the answer is to never give up. I had to do my Malaysia.tv. I had to give up because I was running out of money. You see, if I had stayed, all right, because 2 years later, YouTube was born. Masa tu, because really, I couldn't, masa tu, there's no funder like you have today. So it's all funded from my own pocket. I burned about 2 million ringgit lah at that time. It was too much because I have another division that were making money, and I have Malaysia.tv that were burning away all the money. So anyway, I think, when do you know? I think if the potential is there, I think we have to keep going until if we can take it. If you can't, then no choice lah. But the most importantly is actually to understand the unique value that you bring to the world, whether this is actually going to make a meaningful impact or not. So at that time, I was not sure whether this idea of Malaysia.tv, the streaming, whether it will really make meaningful impact. I have this idea that, hey, I mean, I can make money. It was really money lah at that time. I can make money, but it was not about meaningful impact to the world. Macam today, what I do at Aerodyne is about advancing humanity during drone intelligence. So to me, I have a clear vision that, you know, we believe this technology will bring will bring significant impact to humanity, right? So the earlier one was not really. Masa tu is about making money. And then when it didn't make money for me, I pulled the plug lah, I would say. Right? I mean, if you are clear, at least that's from my personal experience lah. Right, thanks.
Cik Kamarul, you talk about finding the right partner, finding talent. So how do you do that? You have a formula for that?
masa mula-mula I pun tak ada formula, but now I have some guide lah. In fact, that's the reason why I'm going to Brazil. Even though the due diligence has been completed, apa semua, I kata no, we cannot sign on the dotted line until I go there. I makan dengan dia orang, I spend 2 whole days with the partner, because that is actually about the compatibility. You know, whether there's a cultural fit, whether there's kita punya thinking is in the same wavelength. Kalau tak sama memang payah. Then you always fighting battles after battle after. That was what I learned with my first investment in Denmark. The thinking was just too different, so you cannot reconcile. So I think just like husband and wife here or whatever lah, I mean, you need to have that common ground that brings you together lah. So likewise, when we bring partners, when I even bring my senior management, I always look for that. I spend time over coffee or even over dinner. I think that helps a lot. You know, I recently somebody advised me and I use it, baru try sekali lah. You want to hire senior management, get him to drive you in the car. You tengok cara dia drive macam mana. I tried that. Actually, it tells a person a lot the way they drive as well. Right? But again, because then you talk in the car, you can tell. I have one example. Again, it's not about highlighting bad person. This is a lesson learned. So I had another experience, the same thing. I was in the car with this. I was about to hire this guy lah. And it's a long journey. It's about 100 kilometers in London, by the way. And in the car, he kept talking bad stuff about his dad. So I said, okay. So then that was a no-no for me lah. It didn't work. So his intention was really to tell me that he's different. You know, he's very serious. But to me, you never talk about your family to a stranger, especially to your potential boss as well, right? For example. But at least that's my way lah. I think the way we do it is actually we really want to look for compatibility, same mindset. We value differences. Diversity, of course, is very important, but we must have that common language that is the same lah, the common ground. Right, thanks.
So actually, we still got a few minutes.
Okay, boleh.
Ada question lagi? Okay. So your last point, I think is very interesting. Having to fly all over to Brazil to meet your future partner. So it shows how important face-to-face connection is. So we can't really rely on virtual meeting
Tak
all the
sama,
time.
virtual dia nampak handsome, bawah pakai kain plekat.
So how do you see this forward, where people say no, virtual is the norm?
Virtual can I mean is a necessary evil. We have to do it right now. I mean we do. I'm always virtual connection every single day, but nothing beats FaceTime. Nothing really beats FaceTime. I mean, not FaceTime, Apple FaceTime, the real FaceTime. We had some lesson learned also during the pandemic, because we closed several M&A before the pandemic. So bila kita tak jumpa for 2 years after the investment, the alignment lari, macam alignment tayar kereta juga lah. The alignment tu lari, because if you don't have that, you know, face to face, you don't spend time, you don't, you know, after you work together, you sweat it out, then you go for dinner, then lain dia tak ada. So immediately when it's able to travel, I started traveling as well, try to bring this alignment back together lah. Yeah, so it's important lah. I don't see how virtual can solve all the problem. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg kata we can use Omniverse lah, all the metaverse lah, but I don't know. You know, because the little nuances too you can tell. When you speak, suddenly you speak about your family, macam one of my partner, you know, I mean immediately, okay, we know this is the guy, we can work with him. You know, how family value is important for him. Dia invite kita pergi kat rumah dia, so I went to his house. This was in Latin America lah. You know, then you tell, okay, you know, you can work with this guy. You can go through thick and thin with this guy. You know, kalau tak susah lah, basically. Because business is all about solving problem. Right? You don't want people who would ditch you halfway when you face problem, right? Because you need to keep going. Alright, okay. So kalau dah ada, thank you very much for having me pagi ni. Okay, Assalamualaikum.
Thanks. Okay. He has to go, unfortunately. He got back-to-back meeting after this, and then in the afternoon he got another session as well. Okay. For the next speaker, we have an Englishman in Asia. Colin Glass keeps telling everyone proudly that he was born at the same time as Malaysia. He now spends most of his time in Asia and is currently based in Vietnam. He has over 40 years of business experience throughout ASEAN. Colin bukan biasa-biasa. He has an impressive career in UK and he led UK consumer tech giants, including as a managing director at PC World and Dixons. His main sectors of interest are software development, fintech, agri-tech, and education. So, Colin, good morning. Where are you calling us from today?
Hi, Asman.
Hi.
It's also 20 years since I met Asman. I'm in Phnom Penh this morning. We have an education fair here with British universities.
So, over to you, Colin.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard me. I'm in Phnom Penh this morning at an education event with British universities. Is the sound coming through okay, Asman?
Yes, it's coming through okay. So, you can proceed.
Okay, so thank you for that introduction. Very kind of you. Really, I think what Asman and I were talking about was really the best is for me to run a bit of a Q&A section. But what I wanted to focus on were which were the right sectors for entrepreneurs. I was interested listening to Kamarul, and he had a very varied career. But where Aerodyne now is in a very fast-growing area, and that's why I'm focused on where my personal focuses are: e-commerce, fintech, but also quite big now in agriculture and technology in agriculture. For two reasons. I think technology is about to hit the agriculture sector in a very big way. It's been a bit of a laggard in adopting technology. And the other big reason is that there's a huge amount of food poverty in the world and a huge amount of food waste. And application of technology can improve production and reduce the waste. One area I'm very focused on is the science of light and what we can do now with various production. If the supermarket customer of a farmer wants more product quickly, we can up levels of light and grow faster. If the supermarket wants to tone down their orders, we can reduce. So those are my interests. Education, because I love education, and I come from a family of refugees and immigrants, and it was always drummed into me as a child that education was your route out of poverty. So there's a little brief summary, and I'm open here to take any questions.
So, how do you see Vietnam is growing now, and how would that be compared to Malaysia?
I've stationed myself in Vietnam because I think it's the fastest growing potential in ASEAN. For many years I was based in Malaysia. It's how I met Asman in the early 2004, 2005 and so on. And Malaysia is a country that I love. It's a wonderful country, quite highly developed then, and Vietnam was really completely undeveloped, but Vietnam was in a very big growth spurt, is very stable, economically and politically it's extremely stable. And because it's starting from a lower base, for an investor like me, the growth potential is high. The other thing I would say about Vietnam compared to Malaysia is that Vietnam has a much younger population than Malaysia, and that in terms of technology businesses, that's a great help. It's a lot easier for a woman in Vietnam to hold a strong position in business than it is in Malaysia, and I think that helps too. So the population dynamics and the sheer size, I think now, I'm guessing, I think what's the population of Malaysia? About 25 million. Vietnam's now pushing 100 million. So I'd say for me, even though it's a place to live, I really love Malaysia. I think it's one of the most wonderful countries in the world to be in. But in terms of growth, I would say because of political stability, age of the population and size of the population, I would say Vietnam is probably a faster growing country. And I think it's easier, if you're an entrepreneur and an SME, it's easier to grow when the market's growing with you.
Hi, Colin. Along those lines, how do you see the growth of the younger population when it comes to education? How did they get from where they were, 10, 15 years ago, to being, a tech powerhouse that they are now? What changes did they make along those ways for them to be able to be where they are now?
In Vietnam, are we talking about?
Yes, that's correct, in Vietnam.
Okay, I'm very happy to answer that. Just as a small aside, in terms of education and young people, I'm a little bit on my own in this in terms of COVID. I've got 4 grown-up children and 4 grandchildren. My oldest grandchild is 21. And what really worries me, actually in the UK now, our attitude to COVID is that it's going to be with us forever, but milder. Let's just get on with life. And for me, the impact on young people's life and education has been much more serious than the medical impact of COVID. I know that's controversial. I know sadly a lot of people have died, and that's terrible. But if we think about our young people, our children, I think they've really suffered from 2 years of lockdowns, not being educated, not seeing their friends, and particularly children whose families don't have access to technology, so they've not been able to learn online. In Vietnam, the big difference, in my experience there of say 15 years, has actually just been building up capacity. So there's been a lot of investment in schools and universities. So people have had more access to education. There's another thing about the culture. I sometimes give webinars, lectures on cultures in different countries. And there's a scientist, Gert Hofstede, who's mapped different cultures. And Vietnam comes over strongly as a country where people like to do things in teams. So I represent a software developer called Nashtec. They've got 3,000 people around the world, 1,000 selling and marketing around the world, 2,000 doing software. All their software development is in Vietnam because software development is a team game. And again, Vietnam, there's a sort of a great love of education. People really like it. And I know that's the case too in Malaysia. I'm not criticizing or saying Malaysian education is not good. I'm just talking about in terms of the growth. There's been such an expansive growth in other countries. I'm in Cambodia as we speak. In Cambodia, only maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, girls stopped going to school at about 13 or 14. That the law from the government was they should go to school to 16. But fathers took the attitude, well, why should I educate my daughters? Because they're only going to get married. They don't need an education. And that's changed enormously. And so it's, you know, it's another reason why the country's growing so fast. And of course, political stability. You know, they've had the same government here forever. I really want to emphasize that I think Malaysia is one of the greatest countries anyone can ever go to, but it's quite developed. And what I'm talking about is not where they are, where countries are. I'm talking about, for me, I'm talking about the pace of growth. And I think Malaysia needs to rediscover that pace of growth.
Colin, it's interesting to hear from you, I guess a Westerner who has adopted Asia as his country, as his residence. I'm just curious to find out about how do you see the growth and the success of Asia, particularly Southeast Asia. What did we do right, and not about what we did do wrong, but really what do we need to improve on, really? And Southeast Asia in general, and Malaysia particularly, having lived here before.
Yeah, I think Malaysia, I go back to when I started working in Malaysia, I think one of the things it did extremely well was to treat its young people as an asset of the country and not as a problem. If I go back a number of years and I compare, say, Malaysia with the Philippines, in the Philippines, population was a real problem, you know, just more mouths to feed and so on. And I think Malaysia, again, with education, with government policy and with, you know, a lot of sensible long-term planning, you know, I remember the days of the first sort of 2020 views of what will happen. Malaysia intellectually started treating its people as a real country asset. And also, Malaysia has been very open to bringing in intellectual property and finance and resource from foreigners. Still, actually, in Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, etc., there are still more restrictions of what a foreigner can do. And I think being open to inward investment is a very strong thing. Malaysia also, much better than many other countries, I think invested more in transport and communication. You know, KL is a wonderful transport hub, and, you know, with SkyTrain and so on. Not the case everywhere else. You know, so, and then just in terms of your sisters in Singapore, if you think about Singapore, that is such a remarkable success, isn't it? If you think of how such a small place has commanded such a strong economic position. And one of my great friends, and I know a great friend of Asman, Dato Paddy Bowie, I think she must be pushing 100 now. I remember her telling me many years ago that in Singapore, they put a lot of their top talent into government planning positions. And that really, really paid off for them in a very big way. So.
Hi, Colin.
Yeah.
Good
Hi.
morning, and it's really, I think, interesting the insights you carry coming from I suppose, a background, Western lens, if you will. At the same time, kind of witnessing the growth that has happened in this part of the world, right? So
Yeah.
I guess my question would be more along the lines of taking a bit of a macro view, in the sense of how would you compare fundamentally the West and you talk about cultural differences, you talk about the recognition that education plays a huge, tremendous role in progress across many spectrums. But at the same time, the question remains whether or not, Southeast Asia in particular, would be able to take on that leadership position in terms of economic growth moving forward, right? So you clearly have the Western markets that are established. You have a lot of innovation, traction, and momentum that is happening still in the West. There's a lot of talk about globalization and the current pushback on trends that are deemed perhaps to be kind of, counter to globalization. But where do you, I suppose the question really is, where do you see this kind of converging and moving forward, right? How would the West and the East kind of play together nicely?
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. There's a quote that's quite well known. I wish I would have made it. It's not my quote, but that the 19th century belonged to Europe, the 20th century belonged to America, and the 21st century belongs to Asia. And there's one massive factor when I talk to European friends that they completely miss. It's just such a massive world factor that people don't think about. When they think about Asia from Europe, they think about Europe's trade with Asia and how that is important, America or Britain. But when you're in Asia, you realize trade within ASEAN and China, I'd bring India into that too. So actually, the biggest growth dynamic is between Asian countries and other Asian countries. And of course, we can't ignore China in this, which is very interesting from both a business and a political point of view, because, China politically can be extremely scary. I'll come on to talk about agriculture, Vietnam and China in a moment. So the mindset of most British businessmen is the growth of Asia is linked to our trade with Asia, which is not true. The growth of Asia is mostly linked to Asian trade within Asia. And again, Europe's got a very aging population. We've lost some of that fight and competitive spirit. There's a jargon word goes around about, like the 20, 30-year-old somethings who people call them snowflakes, one little bit of sun and they melt, they don't have the toughness or the resolve of kids who have been brought up a little bit with hardship. I mean, I'm not proposing we give everyone hardship, but I think the way you do grow up does forge you. Now, I spend quite a bit of time in America. I've got family in America. We know it as the United States of America, but in my opinion, America has never been more divided, has never been less united. America's almost at war with itself. And I think those things play a big part. So in my opinion, you're in the right place, And the key economic issue is to think through your relationships with China. I've got a number of friends again in Taiwan, and they're perpetually living with the issue. Well, one day China's going to invade us. What are we going to do? So I know I'm only giving brief answers, but one of the reasons, I still go back to the UK quite regularly. My grandchildren are there and so on. And I have some business interests in the UK. But I generally find being here in ASEAN just more motivating. They're more happening, more exciting, and so on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Colin. I think that's the time we have for now. We head for a short break, yeah? Thanks.
Okay. Terima kasih. Asman, good to speak to you again. Love to your family.
Thanks, Colin.
Bye.
So kita break kejap, 5 minutes. And after this, we're going to listen about blockchain and how we can all make money from blockchain. Yeah. Mic okey? Terus. Alright. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Just sorry to take a minute of your time before we continue with our next session. I just want to talk a bit on behalf of Malakat. So my name is Hilmi. I'm the CEO of Malakat Digital, and Alhamdulillah Malakat now dah masuk tahun ketiga. We've been here in this building under Setia Haruman punya building ni. And Brainy Bunch is part of Malakat Group. Brainy Bunch is now dah masuk tahun ke-11. Alhamdulillah. So what we have, just to introduce sikit, maybe some of you guys is the first time coming here ataupun baru second time, tak sempat nak pusing semua. So we have a lot of things in Malakat Eco, not just mall, but we also have this Malakat Grocer. This is the biggest yang we have currently, Alhamdulillah. And also grocer we have also in Malakat Mall, Masjid Tanah, and we have another 6 outlets dekat Kosas, dekat Pandan Mewah, and few other places. Ada 6 outlet kat luar. So restaurant like what you have for the breakfast is from Bancho. Dia ada mix of foods lah, Western ada, Italian ada, nasi lemak pun ada. And then we have a breakfast untuk roti-roti pun ada belah sana, called the Tarik Corner, also a Thai restaurant. But what I want to highlight on the restaurant is we have a fine dining called Casa di Madani. It's a halal fine dining, and I think it's very suitable for corporate meetings ataupun nak bawa anniversary dengan spouse, ataupun nak bawa a group, nak buat celebration with your team members kan. It can fit around 50 packs. So ada tomahawk, ada macam-macam lah. Fine dining kat sana, insyaAllah is very suitable place and beautiful place kat sana. Kalau sempat kejap lagi lepas habis session, I can walk you around to the Casa di Madani untuk tengok. And maybe kalau terus book ke, I can give you discount kan. Sorry kalau macam buat sales ke budget, just nak short session je nak cerita. And because we still early, some of the shops outside still tak buka, but we have many products that we own, that some yang kita buat sendiri, some we imported, and we also currently tengah explore outside of Malaysia. We are importing products from Turkey, because Turkey is actually the China of Europe. They do so many things, and the quality is European quality, tapi the price is sometimes cheaper than China, macam the furniture. So we trying to bring the furnitures, the food products, the attire products semua. And we are also looking for partners for that, distributors, dealers and so on. And just to say that in Malakat we do many things. Even we have IT company under myself, an animation company. We do a payment gateway. We do have a POS system, Koperasi Management System, and a few other system that we have. But what we are trying actually, what we are actually trying to do is we want to provide an alternative solution, especially to people like you guys. Maybe we can have a cheaper solution, but still the best solution that we can have. For example, in grocer, let's say lah, daily punya expenses
you have ataupun monthly expenses for personal is 300 to 500 ringgit untuk barang dapur kan. So tell us, maybe we can provide you a little bit cheaper. Also for your company, also for your organizations. It's not just for grocer, also for some other things. Kita ada baju, kita ada bag, kedai alat tulis ada, buku ada, so many things, and I think we can have a very good partnership ataupun collaboration between all of us, and that's why we also very excited and happy when you guys decided to do the breakfast program here bi-weekly kan. This is the second time. Alhamdulillah, and thank you so much. Just a short je, and lepas ni kita boleh sembang lagi, kalau sempat kita pusing-pusing lah. Alright, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Helmi. So, like you were saying, Malacca Mall is very open. They are very dynamic. So, they just expanding to Turkey. They are opening offices there. Kalau anyone wants to venture over, ikut sekali, welcome. Okay. Hope you've enjoyed the break so far. Okay, our next speaker is a multi-talented guy. He has been in the tech sector since the day when interactive CD is state of the art. And now he's gone forward into AI and Web 3.0 and all those. Okay. And he has also produced award-winning animation series, movie and TV series, The Super Squad. So, and today he's here to help us understand better all these blockchain buzz and all the derivative, NFT lah, crypto, and the next buzz, Web 3.0. So let's see how we can make money from all these things. Please welcome Rashdan Ramli.
Thank you, Aman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. I'm Rashdan. I think as Azman mentioned, I've got quite a varied background, both in media and also in tech. Actually, my background is engineering. I was a computer engineer, computer architecture, chip design. But I started out early in my career doing more of education technology and also content development. But what happened 5 years ago was I took a semi-sabbatical from starting up companies. Tapi ironically, I started a new company while I was doing my semi-sabbatical, a company called Aegis. And Aegis and Media Foundry, my two companies, Aegis specializes in blockchain solutions. Specifically, we specialize in fintech side of blockchain. So what happened was a few years back, we worked with a bank in Labuan, the Capital Investment Bank Labuan, called CIBL, to essentially recreate or actually create, if you know Swift, the Swift network, kalau you transfer duit overseas, everywhere, use the Swift network. So we basically created a supplementary Swift network for trade settlement using blockchain and using a stable coin, a gold-backed stable coin as dia punya currency. So we piloted about 8 countries, currently still in pilot. It takes a little bit of time to pilot this and make sure that everything's going okay. And later this year, inshallah, we'll be doing, we'll be converting our digital, our bank license in Labuan, which is a full investment bank license, into a digital bank license. So that's a plan. So we're planning to do a digital bank asset license to allow for a bridging between the crypto world and also the financial, the traditional banking sector. Yeah. So that's a bit about myself. So when Azman asked me to talk, he asked me to talk about how blockchain can help your business, right? How it can be used. But I think that I rasa tak comfortable talking about that for a simple reason. Because when you start talking about technology, you always think about how do you use the technology in the current setting that we have, right? We want to just transpose the model, our business model, using the new technology, right? Kalau you look at way back in the early 2000s, before the dot-com boom, the 1997, 98, 99, a lot of companies, when it came to internet, internet was still the huge thing, the new thing, just as blockchain is now. A lot of people are just putting in their website information about their companies, almost like a catalog, a company profile on top of that, right? But what really made good internet companies, explode in terms of user base, when you look at Facebook, you look at Airbnb, is when they started looking at the core of that technology, right? And the core technology of the internet at the point in time, and even now, is essentially the network effect. The network effect means when you have one user, nothing interesting happens. But when you have 100,000 users, the network effect comes in. All these users are basically reinforcing your network, creating more value out of it, rather than having, so basically if you have a 10-cent value of a network user of one person, but when you have 100,000 users, the value of one user in there could be worth about 20 ringgit, for example. And that's why companies like Amazon became trillion-dollar companies, because of the network value effect, right? So the lesson that I learned from there is, do not transpose your current business models onto new technologies, using new technologies. Don't think incrementally. Jangan fikir just nak, guna teknologi ni untuk buat something yang sama, to just help your business do something new. Because I remember a study that was done way back in 1996. I was at Petronas at that point in time. And they said that it was a study done by, I'm not sure who, one of those companies that do research, I suppose. I remember it was in an article in Byte magazine. And it says that it found out that a big research was done, and Microsoft products, macam Microsoft Office, the PC dan sebagainya, did not provide enough value return investment to justify the use of computers in organizations. Just imagine that research that was done at that point in time did not see the value of using technology in companies, of using PCs. So that is because they are looking at it from the lens of a traditional business model, right? Things only get more interesting, get more value when you actually look at the core of the technology. So it's the same with blockchain. Yeah, you cannot look at it as, hey, how should I use the blockchain in my company, or how should I use it, in what I'm doing now. Rethink how your business model will be affected. If not, someone will disrupt it, right? For a simple reason, you look at the hotel business, right? The hotel business before the internet, you have all these buildings and sebagainya. You have the Hiltons of the world, the Sheratons of the world, and suddenly they got disrupted when a company called Airbnb came on the scene. A company with no huge capital, didn't have any assets, didn't have any buildings even, right? They suddenly became the largest accommodation company ever, right? With a network of hundreds of thousands of rooms in the whole world. Almost overnight, it was built within 2 or 3 years. So that's when you disrupt, disruption happens when you don't expect it. And that's why you need to look at technology from the core benefit that it brings. The same thing will happen with blockchain. In my opinion, the companies or industries that will be affected by this will be number one, social media. Facebook, Twitter will be really affected by blockchain. Okay? There's trust issues. There's IP, there's user data issues connected to companies like Facebook and Twitter. You don't control it. Yeah? Online advertising is controlled by, this Googles of the world. But with blockchain, you are starting to see companies that are building blockchain solutions to enable you to control your data and share it and make money out of it. Rather than Facebook or Google or Twitter make money from your data, you allow companies to use your data so that they can show you ads that you want, but you control it and you make money from that. The key element of this is called decentralization, right? And you heard about tokens, Bitcoin, these are just mini early days punya usage of blockchain. We talk about the crypto side of it, it's just a small part of this whole revolution that's coming. As big as, in my opinion, maybe as the internet was in our 2000s. Right? So you look at the supply chain. I think one of our people here, I think Dr. Faris, is in the supply chain business. There's something going to be disrupted, right? We already do seeing this, where consortiums of international shipping companies are going into the blockchain business, putting up blockchain for the use of the trade settlement, right? So we are doing that anyway for 8 countries at least, and that might just grow bigger later on, right? And these are the things that you need to look at. There are buzz, I think a lot of people are talking about NFTs, NFT means non-fungible tokens, There are people who sell pictures for 69 million US dollars online. Even in Malaysia, Ujang, if you know the cartoonist Ujang just sold his collection of pictures for 50,000-60,000 ringgit online. And that's just one way of looking at NFTs. But I do caution you that any technology, whether, me being, almost like 50, I'm 50 now actually, and having gone through the whole process from the internet when early days until now, I see the same kind of pattern. Technology will bring with it, in the initial stages, irrational exuberance. This is why you're seeing a lot of NFTs, all these token prices sebagainya, melonjak pasaran harga macam tak kenal dunia lah, something that costs, a picture that can cost 69,000 million US dollars, not thousand, 60 million US dollars. Just imagine that. But at one point or another, it will crash. The market will crash, but from the ashes of what crashes will come up the real companies, the real usage of this technology. The same thing that happened during the dot-com boom and bust. Right? You have companies that have no value, such as Pet.com, had valuations of hundreds of billions, more than old companies like GM had at the point in time, and they crashed and become nothing. But also you have companies like Google and Amazon who crashed and lost almost 90% of the market value, but now look at where they are now. These are some of the most valuable companies in the world. The same thing will happen in blockchain, but you have to time the market right. Be careful about it. When you're investing into crypto, when you're investing into NFT, be careful about it, because we haven't seen the crash yet, right? Because after the crash, when we'll always see the real usage of this technology. So I think that's what I have to say now. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Oh, it's okay. Right. Right. But with blockchain, my little understanding of blockchain is that it is a process regulated process. Right. Is this going to be the new reality of the new world? Okay. That's already happening, right? If you've heard of a term called DeFi or decentralized finance, where the only regulator is a code, the smart contract. And this is happening right now in the world. This is something happening now, not something that is theoretical, it's happening now, right? Kalau before this, you have big companies or hedge funds or PNB or whatever managing hundreds of billions of ringgit, right? Now you have a contract protocol. There's Polygon, there's Sushi Swap, there's Pancake, all these names that are managing hundreds of billions of US dollars without even a single bank or a single fund manager. It's happening now, right? And it cannot be regulated because it's a code onto the internet. It's just code on servers. And there's no one except for the code and the smart contract that managing this. But there is a catch. It only happens within that circle, right? And that's why we're building that bridge, a regulated bridge. The traditional banking is still needed, because you still need to bridge between the online, all this, DeFi and decentralized finance onto the real world. What they don't have now is that bridge. And this bridge is regulated. We are under LOFSA. We are under BNM regulation, right? So the regulation part is the one that will be controlling your KYC, source of funds, and it cannot bridge into the real world without having all this regulations being complied with. So that should answer your question, right? So there's going to be this part that we can never control, but at the same time, the end points, at the end of the day, people still need to use it in the real world. Unless, that is why the IMF is really against the use of Bitcoin in Venezuela or El Salvador, or wherever it is. Because once you breach that and you can use crypto in Malakat Mall, then there's no longer that need for a bridge. And then regulation is, you can't have regulation anymore because it cannot be regulated. So the only way is for the end points to be regulated. You can't, yeah, exactly. Any more questions? Yep.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Thank you so much. I actually come here today to listen to your talk.
Okay, thank you.
Because I think Azman knows it's a public knowledge that I'm not very smart. So I have been reading about blockchain, but the only thing that's blocked is my mind, and I wonder whether you have workshops to explain. But I think you raised a very interesting point that it is not thinking about our business model now, but what it can be and how blockchain. How do you bridge or get across to that mindset change? Because I can't see. Okay, I'm in logistics in a way, and we're looking at supply chain, and all the consultants' report says that amongst the most important technologies that will leapfrog or change logistics will be blockchain, artificial intelligence, and blah blah blah. Yeah. So I don't know how to bend my mind around this, But of course, the next one, that's the first one. The next part is on how it affects finance, as you mentioned. That I think calls for another meet or presentation for you. Perhaps you can share about on the supply chain side of things.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay. We don't do many supply chain projects, right? I think one of the projects I can think of for supply chain is something that we did along the lines of a vertical farming startup that we helped in 2019. It's a vertical farming startup. So what they had was they wanted to be able to control the whole supply, at each point of the supply chain, integrity of the product. So they started out in the beginning. The blockchain is used starting from when they were growing the product. In this case, they were growing pharmaceutical plants, right? So they want to make sure that because it's regulated, so they make sure that they are able to control what goes in there, everything. So all the data with regards to the plant is actually on the blockchain. Okay, so it cannot be changed. So another part is that when they transport it at each transportation hub that they go through, or even during its transport, there needs to be the amount of temperature. The temperature is controlled. So at any point they have to report back. So there's two parts of things that happens in this whole supply chain that's important. One is the Internet of Things, the sensors. So from the sensor goes to a server, and from there it goes to a blockchain that records all this. The advantage of that is, people ask, so why don't you just use a database, right? For this, it's possible, but the value that comes from this is when the consumer wants to check it, right? When the consumer wants to check the integrity of the whole supply chain, they can see very transparently the whole value, the whole supply chain from the time that it was planted all the way when it goes to the plate or goes to the consumer, so they can check that, right? So that was a value that it brings to the table. One thing that I remembered about the study that was done by Walmart, yeah, it used to say that if there is contamination in one of the products, let's say katalah macam banana yang ada contamination in a Walmart store, it used to take them 26 days to determine where it came from and what hops it take, right? But when they started using a Walmart-based blockchain that integrates all the suppliers, it only took them about 60 seconds to determine where it came from. So they can check all the way to the farm, which part of the farm that this came from. So I think that's a value that you bring when it comes to the supply chain.
I think that's very interesting, and I think we have something valid there. But we also have an interesting view of agriculture. You know how technology is always, in abundance compared to application. There's a big gap. In agriculture, it's even bigger. But, Harvard Business School has published a report on 100 reasons why cellular agriculture will come up very big. And I don't think we can avoid cellular agriculture, which means the normal way of agriculture and whatever technology you want to supply, we will just change in under 10 years. So that's a very small time window. And I was wondering if that is the case, should we be thinking blockchain along those lines that, at cellular level of development of a food like milk and meat, your patty and all that, at inception point, at cellular level, really, rather than just the activity of planting and all.
I'm not very familiar with that, so I really can't say. But from my perspective, it looks to me like whether the production of it, so you're talking about whether it's cellular, whether it's growing something, will be the same way. You still have to track it. You still have to know
data,
what goes inside it,
yeah.
right? Even for you, when you talk about aquaculture, certain European countries require that you put certain kind of feeds and into that, and to be able to say how much feed and what kind of feed is put into your fish or into your shrimp, right? So these kind of things should be available and it should be tracked. And when you have tracking, and that's why you can have blockchain. Yeah. Anything else?
Okay. Just one question from me.
Sure.
I'm a non-technical person.
Okay.
So my understanding is that blockchain, every transaction will need to be validated.
Right.
So that's why we get all these mining things going on.
Right.
So the question always, it's already causing a problem
Right.
in China and even here in Malaysia. People curi duit and
Right.
is ecological effect of it.
Okay.
There's some concern. If like trillions of transactions, each of them will require all this processing and electricity and heat and all those.
Right.
Will that be an issue if blockchain actually becomes?
Okay. Very good question. Sustainability is a big issue in the blockchain space, right? Because the first generation of blockchain was used what you just mentioned when it comes to, it's called validation, right? So they are validators. All this mining, what's happening is a validation of transactions. All of them were done from what we call proof of work. So proof of work requires a lot of energy, yeah. Kalau you tahu something called Bitcoin, it's part of what blockchain was. The first crypto that was created called Bitcoin. There's about 10,000 servers around the world, owned by everyone, owned by many people. But it uses as much energy per year as Norway is using, the country of Norway is using, because it uses something called proof of work, where the computer has to do lots of calculations. So what's happening is that in the new second generation blockchains, we are moving towards something called proof of stake. Proof of stake is when you are staking, you're putting a validator will put in their money to be a validator, right? The technical part of it is very technical, but it basically is no longer about making lots of calculations. It's about staking, about being an investor into that liquidity pool for you to become a proof of stake validator. So there's a change in model now, and that uses way less electricity than it did before. Yeah. Next question.
Right. So just a very, perhaps, penama not so clever question. Tapi nak. So here's the thing, right? I mean, as far as I understand it, at a very, very basic fundamental level, penama cryptocurrency is a subset of blockchain, or could I even call it an application of blockchain? Kan?
Right.
So if, let's say, we were to try and sound semi-clever in this topic, what would you say is your 3-minute elevator speech, so to speak, in explaining this to the layman? I know you've gone on for the last 15 minutes, and to be honest with you, I understand maybe half of what you've kindly explained. Kan?
Right.
Tapi I guess the point of the 3-minute elevator speech is that you have to choose what's important there. Certainly the learnings and everything you've talked about, current and future, etc., are valid to practitioners, if I may use that word. Yeah.
Right.
Tapi to everybody else, what's really important that people need to understand about the blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, I think is perhaps the most well-known application of it, yes?
Right.
Tapi itulah, how would you sum it up very quickly so everybody can
Great
follow,
question, great question. Okay, I'm not sure whether I can do that in 3 minutes. I'll just do it very quickly. But what I would say is, if you want to bring back power to the people, if you want to decentralize power, if you want to decentralize influence, if you want to ensure that no one is able to make decisions for you and you are one of the participants in making decisions, and blockchain is for you, whether it's for politics, whether it's for finance, whether it's for supply chains, it's all about decentralization and how you are a participant and you make control of what you're able to do. So decentralization would be my key theme. The core of this technology is about decentralization and your own participation in it. It's about trust. It's about having to be able to trust that system because no one is able to make decisions on your behalf. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Final question, boleh?
Final question, okay.
I've heard in some other talks, they said that NFT is the future. Means that all the tickets, macam bus tickets ke aeroplane tu apa semua, most of our daily things will converted into NFT ataupun all these blockchain things. Maybe boleh explain how that will work in future.
Okay, you have to understand first the difference between a fungible token and non-fungible token. Fungible token means the token is same, macam coin lah, right? The coin, satu coin di mesin sama je. You ambil yang mana pun tak, okay? But when you have a certificate, katalah you pejabat tanah keluarkan certificate pasal you punya tanah kan, that's actually non-fungible because each certificate is unique. Same with your tickets, right? So it's not the value of the NFT that makes the value, it's the utility of the NFT. Macam mana you menggunakannya. To me, it's just a technology. Art is just one of it. Right now, it's really, really hyped. There's a lot of hype around NFT as art, right? But actually, for me, the real value NFT comes in, which is something that we're working on, is when you do something like tokenization of wakaf land, right? So, which is something personally I'm working on. That's when you are able to look at an asset and use NFT to basically tokenize the asset and then use another layer to basically use a fungible token to basically be able to monetize that asset. So this to me is the future of what NFT is all about. It's about bridging between the digital world and the physical world.
Yes, thank you. Because what we are also trying to figure out is how we can use the tokenized technology in crowdfunding, in getting more people to come in, maybe equity, share partner and so on. That's what we are looking for currently.
Exactly. So maybe we can talk about that offline. Okay guys, thank you so much for all the questions and I hope I answered some of your concerns and your questions about blockchain. And if you do have any questions, just send me an email or I'll be able to help. And if I do have something else, maybe next time Azman can have a question session about blockchain. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
Okay, thank you everyone. I think that's the end of our session. Please feel free to continue your discussion or talking among each other. If you need any help to connect with the speakers or want to have a follow-up session, just let me know and we can help to connect you with everyone else. Thank you.